Pennzoil v. Texaco resulted in a $13 billion verdict for Pennzoil, which led to the largest corporate bankruptcy in the history of America, and the whole case was over a handshake.
Getty, you son of a...
In today's video, I'm going to give you the top 5 reasons why Pennzoil was able to get such a large verdict against Texaco.
There's like 40 ounces of oil.
Reason number 5. J. Paul Getty created a total mess. Paul Getty took over his father's oil company in the late 1920s when it was worth roughly $15 million and turned it into an oil empire worth billions and billions and billions of dollars. Paul Getty was responsible for going into the Middle East and securing the drilling rights in the Saudi Arabian neutral zone. Spoiler alert, Saudi Arabia has a lot of oil. There's no doubt that he was a prolific and excellent business person. But for his success in the business world, he didn't really have his family life buttoned up. In fact, he was kind of a bad family guy.
All right, family, line up for cigar burns.
Paul Getty had 5 children, 5 marriages. He didn't really have a great relationship with any of his kids. Actually, one kid tragically died when they were young, but the 4 kids that made it to adulthood, George, Ronald, Eugene, and Gordon, didn't really pan out. George Getty, his oldest son, who showed the most promise, probably committed
Suicide is badass.
Ronald Getty, his second son, was actually disinherited. Eugene became a hippie, leaving only Gordon.
Ah, Gordon, here you are.
When Paul Getty took over the family business, he actually didn't own it. It was his mom, Sarah Getty, who owned the remaining shares. Paul Getty tried to buy Sarah Getty out. They came to a deal. Paul Getty actually couldn't pay Sarah Getty, told her son Paul, said, "Hey, Paul, listen, you don't need to pay me. But in exchange, we need to put my shares into a trust. That trust is going to survive for the life of my grandkids and their kids." Hello, rule against perpetuities for any law students listening. That trust would end up growing to roughly 40% of Getty Oil. Additionally, throughout his life, Paul Getty would go on to acquire more shares of Getty Oil individually, roughly 12%. And when Paul Getty died, those 12% shares went to the Getty Museum. Then you had the remaining owned by publicly traded shareholders. What ended up happening is corporate raiders ended pitting the 3 entities against each other. It created a total disaster, which leads me to reason number 4. Gordon Getty and Getty Oil didn't like each other.
They're waiting for you, Gordon, in the test chamber.
In fact, it gets so bad that the management of Getty Oil ends up concocting a secret plan to find people in the Getty family who are members of the trust controlled by Gordon to file lawsuits against Gordon saying he has violated his duty as a trustee and trying to kick him out. Yeah, it's that bad. It's very malicious. There's a lot of bad blood between the two sides. And once this internal drama gets leaked to the press, corporate raiders start flying in, like Hugh Litke, which is reason number 3. Hugh Litke knew what he was doing. Hugh Litke was a titan in the oil industry. He actually got his start with George Bush. Yes, President George Bush and Hugh Litke were partners. They created a company called Zapata Petroleum that did very well. After they split up, Hugh Litke went to Paul Getty and asked Paul Getty for his support to be made CEO of the South Penn Oil Company. Paul Getty helped Hugh Litke become CEO. Hugh Litke would then rebrand the South Penn Oil Company to Pennzoil. And when the news broke that Gordon Getty and Getty Oil had turmoil, Hugh Litke jumped at the opportunity. He actually approached Gordon Getty and said, "Hey, Gordon, I see what's happening. Let's do a tender offer. I'm going to place a $100 tender offer on the stock market when the stock was trading at roughly $75. I'm going to buy out all the remaining shares. We're going to pay off the museum. You're going to keep 4/7 of Getty Oil. I'm going to buy 3/7 of Getty Oil. And we're going to go and be happy and form a partnership. And we're going to make a lot of money together. And guess what, Gordon? you are going to be the boss.
I miss being the boss.
Everybody seems to agree to a deal in principle, but it's not signed yet. While the paperwork is being drawn up, Texaco actually comes in and says, hey, screw that. We're going to pay everybody $125 a share, including the Sarah C. Getty Trust.
I had the connections to get everybody paid.
In the Pennzoil agreement, the Getty Trust with Gordon Getty were not sellers. They were actually buyers participating with Pennzoil. But then when Texaco came in and offered such a high price, $125 a share, everybody ended up deciding to sell. And Pennzoil was left with nothing. That's why they decided to sue Texaco. Which brings me to reason number two. The lawsuit was a jury trial in Texas. This case was actually originally filed in Delaware for tortious interference. Joe Jamail, who was hired while on a hunting trip with Pennzoil CEO Hugh Litke, found an obscure loophole in Delaware law. Delaware law said that if a party had not filed an answer to a lawsuit, the party who filed the case can dismiss the case at any time. Pennzoil dismissed the lawsuit and filed a lawsuit in Texas 15 minutes later. And that's important because if they stayed in Delaware, they would have not gotten in front of a jury. They would have heard arguments in front of a judge, and a judge would have been much more conservative with the damage model estimation, which directly brings me to the number one reason why Pennzoil v. Texaco resulted in a $13 billion verdict. And that reason is Texaco did not put any damage model expert on during the trial. Joe Jamail said that their damages included the cost of finding 1 billion barrels of oil. What did Texaco do in response? Nothing. Texaco's whole stance throughout the entire trial was, we didn't do anything wrong. We didn't breach. We didn't tortiously interfere with the Pennzoil Getty contract because they didn't have a contract because nothing was signed. So they asked the jury for zero, and they didn't anchor the jury in any alternative. Usually, if you're trying a case like this, you would say, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I firmly believe that my client is not liable at all. However, if you're inclined to believe that they are, I'm going to give you some suggestions on a more appropriate damage model and anchor them down. The problem with not offering any sort of secondary damage model is you're betting the farm on the liability side of things, which Texaco lost. So the jurors even admitted this in future interviews. They said, look, we might not have awarded such a large amount of money, but there was nothing in evidence to the contrary. The only thing in evidence was that Texaco harmed Pennzoil to the tune of $10-odd billion. So there you have it. And I know this was just a quick video and I glossed over a lot of things, but I did a 5.5-hour podcast about this specific case where we go into the nitty-gritty details. And if you're interested in learning more, click the links, which will be somewhere. Okay, thanks for listening. Bye.